Today we're going to talk about how AI will change your website, brought to you by Garage Door Marketers. So, I get a lot of customers asking me about AI now. Sure, you've probably heard about it, but it's there's a lot of discussion about what it's changed, what it can do, and what it will change, over the next couple of years. And nobody really knows where it's going to shake out, or what the timelines are, or what all the changes will be. Um, But what we do know is that things are changing and will change. And so what you as a business owner have to do is, prepare and make the changes you can. And so what we're going to talk about today is how this will likely impact your website over the next 12 to 18 months or so. All right, so let's get right into it. Today we're talking about, is your website ready for the AI first internet? And this is really applicable to all local home services type businesses, the kind of things that we're going to see over the next 12 to 18 months. And there's a really big shift going on, and you want to think of it in kind of three different areas. The first is that your website is going to need to be a trusted data source. It already should be, but it really is almost more about how it's presented and how extensive it is. For the last 20 years, we've been optimizing websites for Google and for keywords. And each page kind of had a keyword, and you probably are familiar with this. Well, now it really needs to change into being something a little bit more comprehensive without ruining it for the users. One of the biggest consumers of your websites now, especially over the next, period of time, is going to be AIs or large language models and agents and things like that. And so you have to be feeding facts to them in ways that will make them recommend you to their users. You also are going to need to improve your conversion. Conversion rate optimization is what we'll call it. You will see less traffic. You're probably already seeing less traffic, but the traffic that you'll be getting is going to be better. It's going to be higher intent. There's going to be less researchers, more people getting to your site, wanting to take the next step and doing whatever it is you want them to come to your site to do. So you'll have to make improvements there. And then as we get further out there, maybe closer to 18 months, maybe sooner than later, the stuff is changing very rapidly. Your business is going to have to be ready to handle agentic actions, which is basically AI robots calling and booking on behalf of humans or users or your customers. Okay. Google's already testing this, so this is not really as far out as it might sound. And we're dealing with what is being called the zero click reality. We are seeing, everybody's seeing that traffic is down. Okay. Well, not necessarily a bad thing because people are doing their research. The problem is you're losing some of the control to shape that research because it's being collected and served by Google's AI results, which we'll call Gemini, or ChatGPT, or whatever. But those are the two main ones. So what's happening is you're getting less informational visits, and so it's really just a change in how we're building our websites, because the whole thing has been built around this model where we've got to inform and then we've got to maybe educate and then move to conversion. We're going to have to, as this transition happens, start shifting our building of these to make them less informational and more conversion efficient. They're really almost going to become more app-like, but I'm not going to get too much into that today, maybe a little bit. Another thing we're seeing is that search is becoming conversational. And we've already been moving in this direction in terms of, keywords have not been a thing for some time now. They are, but you can't optimize a page for a keyword in the way that you could a couple years ago. Especially now with AI, these queries are becoming more conversational. Customers aren't just searching plumber near me, things like that. They're really having more conversations with these AI agents. And so they're asking more detailed and specific things that you can't really easily optimize for. The examples here are, well, who can replace a water heater today and offers financing? Well, that's a complex inquiry. You have to answer that in some ways on your site in some detail so that you can get pulled into that. Is trenchless sewer repair worth it for a 1950s house? Again, we're getting very specific now, but we're also getting very broad in the query space. And so we really have to rethink entirely how we've been building websites because we have to be able to provide the basic set of facts to answer questions like this. And what we're going to see is that AI will act for customers. And as I said, Google's already testing this. So they are already trying to call to confirm pricing and availability. They want to book appointments directly, check service area coverage. So basically, people will ask questions of these agents, and these agents will either have crawled or will crawl in real time sites that are relevant to this query and try to get the answers to present back to their customer, the user, your customer, or take the action directly. They might book an estimate time right on your website and report that back to the customer if you happen to be the best match for what they're looking for. So the way that we've built websites in the past with these static pages, there's forums and there's calendars at times, but this is going to change a lot. And it's going to change fairly fast if this pace continues. So you have to start thinking, how am I going to make my website able to do this stuff? It's not all quite there yet. So digging in a little bit more. Okay, so how do you do this and how do you get prepared? And then the first one is machine consumable identity. And you probably are already or should be already heading down this direction. So for like a service area business, if you're not taking customers or really more specifically, if you don't have an office, don't show your address, right? Keep your service areas realistic. Now, there's still a bit of a challenge here because, as you likely know or may not, Google Maps still prefers an address as an anchor point for um, proximity. So we may see at some point that it makes sense to stop showing your address if you're a service area business because now it's going to confuse the AIs. We'll be monitoring this. The answers aren't clear yet. Another thing is schema or structured data. And this should already be done. This has been important for quite some time. But if you haven't done it, you should. It should be part of your approach here, which is really just implementing facts about your business in a machine readable way in your website. And then good old profile consistency. This is citations. So your name, address, and phone must be identical all over the place. Now, I think AIs and agents will be better at assessing minor differences here than maybe Google was in the past, but nevertheless, it doesn't hurt to be accurate here everywhere you go. And then pillar two, the conversion engine. So you already want to do this, but it's going to have to get better. It's going to have to get more capable. And as I alluded to, your website is going to have to become more of an app. Think about websites you use. Like this, for example, like say you want to book a flight. Well, you generally are doing all of that on their website, right? You're going to have to start offering that same level of flexibility. Now, this gets complicated because, how do you authenticate? How do you get access to these things? There's some security issues with um, large language models or these AIs and prompt injections. So, this isn't all solved for, but it's coming. So you're going to want to provide the ability for agents to schedule messaging, chatting, things like this on your website. You're going to want to have this. So websites will become more conversion and action focused, and they are already to a point, but it's you're going to have to enable some connectivity and some information exchange and probably even pricing and things like that. You're going to have to enable maybe ballpark estimates, which maybe is uncomfortable, but it's going to get there, and the AIs are going to shop for people. You're going to have to put your pricing out front. I suspect that will be coming. And AI answerable content. So these are the things where when a person asks a conversational like query, you need to have all this information on your page readily accessible because AIs are presently at least dealing with a limited context window. And so what's your pricing? How far do you go? Do you do after hours? What are your warranties, guarantees, service area, all these sorts of things. And it has to be structured in, an understandable way. You probably have a lot of this or most of this on your site already, but you probably want to expand this Q&A type content so that you have the answers that these agents are looking for. And then operational readiness, like, is your staff ready to answer the phone and give these answers, right? It's not happening all that much yet, but it could turn on in a period of a month. And so you have to be aware of this and aware that it's coming and be ready to train your staff to be able to handle these questions. It'll be weird. Google, it's like talking to, you call customer service and you talk to a robot. You're talking to a robot and you want to say representative. Well, you can't say representative here. You got to answer their questions, and they're recording your answers, and they're going to take them back to whichever customer is responsible for initiating this. So there's some functionality that you're going to have to build in here. And so just a 90-day action plan. What can you do now? Well, get your citations in order. Just be aware of the information you have on your site. Unblock crawlers. So some hosts and other things are blocking AI crawlers by default. Cloudflare is one example. We don't want to do that because I understand when people do it, especially if they're an information business, they don't want to give their content away for free. However, in your case, you want to give your content away as much as possible because you want your customers to find you with these things. It's very important. Okay. The next month plus, increase the conversion ability of your site. Book now, get chat going to the extent that you can, enable booking, or start thinking about how you're going to do that. Is there a tool that you're using that lets you do that, but you just haven't integrated it with your website? I'd start thinking about that. And then further down the line, as we get kind of, those first two things solved, now you want to start increasing your frequently asked questions content. So decision support pages, pricing guides, warranty info, comparisons. Think about the questions that your customers ask you. Have those questions answered on your website. That's how you want to start thinking about this. And so just as a guiding principle to think about this, you want your website to answer and eventually be able to do these things on your behalf. What do you do? Where do you do it? When can you do it? How much does it cost? Why should I trust you? How do I book right now? If you can answer all those questions on your website, you're going to be in good shape. So if you have any questions, send them in. We'd love to answer them. And just pay close attention to this. I mean, there's really two things that you should be doing right now. Number one, paying attention because the stuff is moving fast. And number two, marketing aggressively and grabbing as much market share right now as you can. Because if there's one thing that nobody knows, it's exactly how all of this is going to shake out. And you want to be in the best position you possibly can as these things change. So I hope this was helpful. Send in any questions, and we'd love to talk to you about these things. We'll see you on the next one.